you. Let's see, it looks like we have good quorum of our partners. And I'm going to go ahead and get started, but it doesn't look like everybody has completed the poll, so we're going to hopefully remember to remind you throughout this meeting to finish it so we can get this settled once and for all. Based on the poll, this after we finish our meeting, we'll post the new date so everybody is on track. Good to see everybody. Happy Friday, 2021. Things are looking ahead. We're all looking forward, working together to solve some of the most toughest challenges in our community. So welcome, I'm Stacy Caldwell. I'm the CEO of the Tahoe Truckee Community Foundation. So good to see all of your smiling faces and so appreciate your time this morning. I wish I had breakfast burritos and coffee for all of you. I miss our time together and look forward to a time when we are back together, maybe at the airport, maybe in some larger facility as we continue to grow. We have a full agenda today. You should have received your packet last week. Hopefully it wasn't too heavy of a lift. We have, I'm going to go ahead and just share with you the agenda and walk you through it. So here is your official welcome. I have asked you already to complete that poll that has been posted. If you have any issues, just mention something in the chat. And we will soon invite our storytellers to join us and share some stories that we've cultivated, curated for you. We will hear from our Housing Funders Working Group. Lots of good work happening there and some great news as we accomplish some big things in 2020 and looking ahead as it relates to funding in our region. We'll take a 5-minute break to stretch and go get more coffee, and then we'll come back and we will present to you our regional housing implementation plan.
If you don't mind.
Finally, we will have an update from our state policy working group.
Yes, it does.
A great year for our legislatures to focus on housing. And then we set aside 40 minutes for our partner updates. We know that you guys are up to a lot right now, and we want to hear from you. And then finally, we'll hear from the public who has joined us today. And just so everybody knows, when we go into breakout sessions related to the regional housing implementation plan, we will have a blend of our partners and members of our community. So this gives us a chance to gather insights and share with each other. So with that, what I'd like to do is invite our first storyteller. As many of you know, we always try and ground ourselves in what is relevant and happening in the community as it relates to housing. Some of these stories inspire us to think in new ways and look at innovative ideas. We really wanted to think about that this time. And yet at the same time, we know that there are a lot of community members who are struggling to secure housing. And it's kind of the worst time for that. It wasn't good before, but imagine being in a pandemic with stay-at-home orders, although they have been lifted, but still to have to scramble at this time to find a stable house to keep you and your family well. But this particular set of stories is really focused on kind of looking ahead and kind of inspiring us of what's to be. So with that, I'd like to introduce Patty Baird. Many of you know Patty. She is an active community member and also the proprietor of the Cedar House Sports Hotel. And Patty in her role as board member of Visit Truckee Tahoe, has come with a story to share about what she and some of her colleagues see as the future of tourism. And so with that, Patty, welcome. Glad to have you here.
Thank you, Stacy, and good morning, everyone. We're excited to share Visit Truckee Tahoe's vision toward developing a regenerative and sustainable reset toward visitation. So tourism around the world is at a pivotal moment. For popular U.S. destinations, like Truckee and Lake Tahoe, the promotion and management practices of days past, they no longer apply. COVID-19 accelerated the urgent need for transformation across all aspects of our lives. It has never been more important than now to design Truckee's Tourism Tomorrow, as we like to call it, toward a sustainable, resilient, and regenerative future. Now, when we use the terms regenerative and sustainable tourism, what does that mean? Basically, these concepts advocate that our social, economic, and environmental systems are interconnected, interdependent, and need to work together in balance. It also stresses that we cannot extract more from the system than can be replenished. With that as an objective, Visit Truckee Tahoe is embarking on a multi-year development strategy that centers on how our organization can lead a tourism evolution that sustains and helps grow Truckee as a high-quality place to live and to visit. Long-term, resilient, social, economic, and environmental recovery and regeneration will require all sectors of industry to rethink how tourism works, who it works for, and how success is defined. With that, we will begin this collective endeavor by reaching out with a listening tour that involves businesses, our residents, talking and learning from many stakeholders, such as Mountain Housing Council, to begin looking at tourism holistically with the ambition of linking the tourism economy to the broader goals of our community. Now, when a community flourishes, visitors will feel welcome and can sense the essence of place. When a community is thriving, its residents are happy. They love living in the place and are proud of it. Tourism in balance is when the residents do not feel inconvenienced by visitors, but instead enjoy and understand the positive impacts that tourism can bring, how it can strengthen and protect heritage, natural assets, character, infrastructure, and jobs. The guiding principles of sustainable and regenerative tourism are about making places better for people to live and work, which in turn makes a place special for people to visit. The success for destinations in the future will no longer be measured by volume and high growth, but instead by its reputation and what it stands for. Now remember, what you measure typically is what you get. So, should we not measure success on what we value? We can build the world we want that is based on our beliefs and our values. COVID-19, it upset the tourism landscape, but with that comes a whole range of opportunities for those of us that choose to rise to the challenge. A better path for tomorrow is possible, but it's going to take some courage, fortitude to speak up and to acknowledge some uncomfortable truths. This will not be an easy journey, and we're not blind to that. We are hiring proven consultants in the destination management and stewardship realm to help us develop a living destination stewardship and management plan that defines Truckee's values and will guide our future like a compass. Becoming aware that things can be different and the willingness to take responsibility is key. And of course, that's the Trekkie way. Thriving communities are not created in silos. They are created together. Thank you.
Thank you, Patty. I had the opportunity to catch up with Patty on this new journey for what she and the board of, tell me the name again, Patty. I know you changed it. Oh, you're muted. Say it one more time.
Yeah. Visit Trekkie Tahoe, formerly known as TBID. So
right.
Yeah.
It's and I think what really resonated and what I think is important here for us to see happening is this transformation of a conversation around what does tourism mean to our community. So often we talk about it as the beginning, it's the heartbeat of our economy. And yet, it comes with its costs. And I feel like what you're trying to do is really start to reconcile those pieces and put the community first in this message that I heard.
Exactly.
And we welcome your participation here. If you and Colleen want to continue to be a part of this meeting today, if you have time, we welcome you to participate. And we recognize that housing and tourism, transportation is all integrated. And so, there's so many pieces of a community that you almost can't really focus just on one without knowing the impacts of the other. But this is good, and we really appreciate you joining us, and thank you for bringing that. Our next storyteller, thank you. Our next storytellers are zooming in from Telluride. I love the Zoom format. As an organizer, it's really a wonderful way to ensure that everybody is able to access the meeting. And so this story comes to us again from the town of Telluride. We have Melanie Wasserman and Lance McDonald here to share a story about a project that came to us by way of one of our Mountain Housing Council partners who's inspired by it. And whenever we hear of good stuff happening in other places, we like to put a spotlight on it. And so with that, I'd like to invite Melanie and Lance to come and share their story, and welcome.
Thank you, Stacy. And thanks, Christina, for the invitation. Lance, are you on here too?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. I'll let Lance get us going because he's got the most background and knowledge in terms of how this project came to be.
Okay. Thanks, Melanie. And so I work for the town of Telluride, and what I do is a lot of the conceptualization of the housing projects, and then the design, the cost estimation, overseeing that process, getting the project teed up for construction, getting it financed, and then getting it built. And what Melanie does is make sure that what we're building is suitable for rental housing, but also the more social aspects of why we're doing what we're doing and who it's really serving and what types of people are we actually having in these units. Each project we do kind of has a different focus and intent of who we're trying to hit in our community. So real quick, the boarding house at Virginia Placer is it was kind of a hybrid between a dormitory and a European youth hostel. This is kind of the visions that we had going into it. This was completed a couple years ago, and the thought was that we were trying to come up with housing solutions that were not the traditional multifamily apartments or we haven't building single-family homes or townhomes. We were looking at something a little bit different. So we did this project called the Virginia Placer, which included some traditional apartments, some tiny homes, and then also a boarding house for 46 residents. The way it worked financially, we had a difficult site. We were in bedrock and things like that. And so basically,
He already had his breakfast.
Basically, we had a project that was $8.6 million.
I'm sorry, everybody. If I'm so sorry if Lance can hear me. I'm trying to unmute you. I'm learning, y'all. Here we go.
Hi.
There we go. Okay, sorry for the interruption. If everybody
That's
else,
fine.
I'm still learning this. Please, please mute yourself unless you really want us to know what you had for breakfast.
I had a bacon avocado toast, but no. Okay, so was that clear what I was saying, or is that not?
We did. We heard you to the point of it sounds like it's a project that has multi types of housing, and you were starting to talk about the financing, and I think you were
Oh,
also
okay.
focusing on the boarding house.
Yes. Okay. So the boarding house was a part of this Virginia Plaza project, which also had apartments, tiny homes, and of course the boarding house. And basically, it was a $8.6 million project that we provided $960,000 in affordable housing funds, and then the rest was financed with a revenue bond secured by the leasehold interest of the property. That did not. The numbers I just stated did not include any land costs. We already owned the property, and did not include water and sewer tap fees or building permit fees and whatnot, because we waive those for the projects that we do in town. We also waive those for any private developer that would be coming forward with affordable housing as well. That's in our land use code. So the upshot is that we were able to attain, and Melanie can correct me if I'm wrong, it's about $400 a month for the rent in a boarding house room. We have some double rooms and we have some single rooms. It is ski in. It's a short walk to the lift. It's next to open space. It's actually quite nice living, and it was very successful. We may do some more of these types of housing units, but we certainly learned a lot about the operational aspects and the social aspects of this type of living. And with that, I would turn it over to Melanie.
Thanks, Lance. Yeah, so my name's Melanie Wasserman. I'm the housing director for the town of Telluride. I oversee the rental housing that the town owns, including the boarding house, which Lance has been telling you about. As he said, it's kind of a cross between a hostel and a dorm. So we have single occupancy units, which is basically just a room. The room has some furnishings that are already there, so people don't bring their own furniture with them. But the single occupancy rooms all share a communal bathroom. And the communal bathrooms have multiples of everything, showers and toilets and sinks. And then there's double occupancy rooms. And so that's when two people share a room. The double occupancy rooms have a Jack and Jill bathroom between them. So they have the option to use their Jack and Jill bathroom or the communal bathrooms. And then each floor of the boarding house has a kitchen area, which also has multiples of everything. And then on the kind of what we consider the main floor, there's a big great room that has like a larger hangout area and a big deck off of it. As you can imagine, there's a lot of fun things that happen in a boarding house. It's a younger demographic, very excited to be here. In developing this project, I think what, and I'm sure you see this where you are as well, but the town was recognizing that as the supply of privately owned rentals has been disappearing from the market, it's made it really hard for our seasonal workers to come in. And those seasonal workers are, you know, a big part of our community. They're a big part of what makes our economy work here as well, with the ski area, as well as other industries. And so we're trying to fill that niche. And how do we provide good housing for these seasonal workers and for people who are kind of coming to Telluride and need a landing pad, which is sort of what we've seen that serve as that, you know, initial 3-month landing pad before people kind of launch into the community, maybe with more permanent housing if they're going to stay. The leases that we offer to people are 3-month leases, and we're pretty flexible with that. So if somebody needs to break that early, we can usually work with them within reason. We try not to be too black and white in terms of how we operate, which I feel like has been a kind of key factor in making this a success. The gentleman that we have as the boarding house manager, who is a live-on-site manager, has just been the right fit for this kind of project and demographic, and he's been with us since the boarding house opened. The rooms are purposely designed, and Lance had a really big hand in this, but they're purposely designed to be able to be turned very quickly. The size of the rooms is part of that. They're just rooms. There's no other facilities attached to them, as well as the fact that the furniture is all pretty basic and simple. If you go onto the Town of Telluride website and look for the Telluride Housing Department, on that page you'll find a lot of pictures of the boarding house. I'll try to share a link to the group after we're done speaking, but you can see some pictures to get some examples of what the boarding house is like. We have a couple other facilities that are all intended as community housing, specifically for our workforce. And I think I'll leave it at that unless there's a question session or Lance has anything to add. I don't know.
I just wanted to add that Melanie was correct that it's really important that we be somewhat flexible on our, lease arrangements. But we also designed this to be nice. There's like a ski locker on the first floor, common laundry areas and stuff. But we didn't want to make it so nice that people wouldn't kind of move on to the next level of housing once they get more established in the community. So there was kind of a balance there about making it very nice, but at the same time, not somewhere where you want to live in it for a super long period of time.
I just wanted to add one more thing. Since COVID is, usually on everybody's mind, COVID has produced some very unique challenges for the boarding house because there are so many shared communal spaces. So one of the first things we did as COVID kind of ramped up was to develop our kind of protocols of how to handle things if somebody in the boarding house tested positive with COVID. And I won't go into those, but I just wanted to mention that because when you're looking at a housing space that has shared kitchens, shared bathrooms, shared hallways, younger demographic that's more inclined to congregate, not wear masks, it does create some interesting issues to deal with. So I just thought I'd throw that out there as well.
Thank you so much, Melanie and Lance. We really appreciate your time today. What I'd like to suggest, I'm getting a lot of direct questions. If you guys can email myself or Christina with your questions, I can bundle those up and get them off to Lance and Melanie, and that way we can follow up. And there's also a clear interest in really breaking down the finances related to this project. And so I'm hopeful that we can circle back with y'all and maybe get down to some more details that our partners are asking about. So with that, I want to thank you both. Okay. And again, I know you have busy days ahead of yourself as well, but if you would like to stay on for any part of this, you're more than welcome. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to go ahead and jump back into our agenda, and I'm going to very just quickly ground ourselves in the work a little bit more here. I'm going to share my screen. And for many of you, you already know that this is a project of the Tahoe Truckee Community Foundation that is overseen by a board and wonderful staff who carry out our mission of connecting people and opportunities to generate more resources for a more caring, creative, and effective community. Many of us know us for our scholarships and our grant work, but we have a number of other programs and initiatives out in the community as well. And for some reason, my computer is sticking. I'm sorry. Let's see what I can do here. The Mountain Housing Council is designed on a collective impact model that is how regional communities can work together for systemic change. And we have 27 partners, including the Tahoe Truckee Community Foundation. Many of you have been with us since the beginning, and we thank you. And we have some new members as well this year and growing. And we are really focused on accelerating housing solutions that are within this achievable local housing definition that actually is not just your traditional affordable low income, but it goes up to that middle income household size of 195% AMI. So when we talk about Mountain Housing Council and the solutions we seek, we really embrace this much broader spectrum than what HUD tells us is affordable. Many of you are used to our dashboard and placemat at all of our in-person meetings. We've been working hard to translate that into digital tools. And so we would like to encourage you to take a look at the housing tracker and the breakdown. There was a lot of requests to break it down by AMI and other details. And so you can spend some fun time on our housing tracker now on the website, which is also mobile friendly. And it just gives our community a window into all the good work that's taking place across the community. We have a form that we keep up with these different projects. It's primarily available for our jurisdictions to complete, but we're in the process of figuring out how to translate that to some of the developers as well. We have meeting agreements with each other, and it's a standard of how we work together. Bring your best ideas, be prepared, treat others with respect, voice your opinions and concerns, advocate for our collaborative goals, work collaboratively and strive for consensus, share your expertise, serve as an ambassador in our community. And of course, please, thank you for your patience and mutes and use of chat. Public engagement is available, I think, at the end of this meeting, but we will also include them in the breakout sessions. I've already gone through the agenda. Hopefully you've completed the poll. We'll post it again in the chat. We're trying to find Fridays that work for some of our partners who are not able to be here because of standing board committees. So here we are at our update from the Housing Funders Network Working Group. At least that's the working title of it. And the idea here is that there are community funds available from various agencies, and this allows us to work together to align processes and due diligence, to create a streamlined path for some of these projects that need financial support, and just be, a little bit, I guess, more sophisticated in the way we think about how we can help fund some of these projects. And so you should have seen our notes from the meetings over the last quarter to get more of a window. And today we have some partners here that are going to just share some highlights. Let me just confirm. I apologize. I'm always looking at an agenda as well to make sure I'm not missing somebody here. Oh, wrong one. Oh, so it's me. All right. So, and then it is, I hand it off to Alyssa. Perfect. Okay. So we have spent the first quarter of working together here, really understanding what people refer to as the capital stack. Many of you know that it is a fairly complex stack of money that has to come together for these multi-million-dollar projects, oftentimes commingling public and private funding, permanent financing, soft community support, tax credits, grants. And so we have been looking at what does it take to not only fund it, but what are the costs and where can we apply incentives or opportunities to lower that cost, that barrier for a lot of projects to come to fruition. So we actually have been spending time looking at the projects that have been completed and having a better understanding of that breakdown of costs, how the financing was structured, what incentives were brought to bear. and we're tracking these projects to again figure out how the funding that is available in our region, which is it's significant in the sense that a lot of communities, especially rural communities, don't have sources of funding. But at the same time, with the cost of these projects, there's always a desire to have more. And so I'm going to hand it off next to a guest with the TRPA, Alyssa. I'm going to remember her last name. Alyssa Bettinger. So TRPA has had a working group focused on housing as well. And one of the first exercises they did was to look at this same kind of concept of a capital stack and to put a tool together that allows for it. And so with that, I'm going to ask Alyssa to share the tool that they've been working on. It was quite enlightening. And then we'll come back and our working group on funders will share some lessons learned from it. So with that, Alyssa, I think you're going to share your screen. So I'd like to welcome you. So glad you're here. As many of you know, John Hester and Karen Fink have been our partners with Mountain Housing Council. So it's been really wonderful to get to know Alyssa a little more as well. So with that, welcome.
Thank you, Stacy. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
All right. Great. Good morning, everyone. My name is Alyssa Bettinger. I'm with the TRPA. And again, yes, I've been working with Karen Fink and John Hester on the Housing Initiative since we kicked it off in the late spring of last year. And when we started our housing initiative, we came into it knowing that we had, we kind of already knew where our focus areas would probably land just because we had been part of the Mountain Housing Council process, as well as the Tahoe Prosperity Center with the South Shore Housing Action Plan. And then we've also been meeting with our local jurisdiction partners to kind of identify where we need to focus our efforts and making changes on our end to make it easier for workforce housing to be developed. But with that, there was a lot of things. There was a lot of focus areas that we wanted to tackle. And so we put together a few different evaluation criteria to help us prioritize which actions or strategies we wanted to focus on first. And so one of those, the ways that we evaluated it, these actions were through this housing cost analysis tool. And this is really looking at what is going to have the most bang for your buck. So we took the overall development cost, looking at a variety of different unit types you can see on the x-axis here. And then we looked at what the total development cost would be, and then we divided it by the number of units. And then on the left-hand side, you can see these different cost-reducing actions. And so we came up with an estimated cost for these different actions that we were hearing. So like what would it, how much would it reduce the overall development cost if you either have donated land or have a ground lease? And then similarly for bonus units, which is something that TRPA already does, how much does that reduce the development cost per unit? And then when you start to look at these different actions together, what is kind of the cumulative impact of all of this? And so we wanted to build this tool as something to help us prioritize what we should focus on first, but we also wanted to build it build the tool as something that our partners could use as well. So you can see that like modular construction is not something that TRPA would necessarily take on. We would work with our local jurisdictions to make sure that it's allowed in the code. But we wanted this to be something that could be used not just by TRPA, but by our partners as well. We started with, or I guess the original data for this came from a pro forma analysis that was done by our consultants, Placeworks. back in 2018 for the Development Rights Initiative. And when we took this, the kind of first version of this tool to our housing working group back in the summer, we realized pretty quickly that that data was a little bit outdated, and it was much too low. We were hearing from developers that it was not realistic of what we were seeing on the ground, and so we spent a couple months this fall working with some local developers to try to hone this data a bit more to be more realistic of what developers were seeing on the ground. And I think the costs have probably gone up even since we have tweaked this in the last few months, just because housing prices are going up quite a bit right now. So just to give you a quick demo of the tool, say you come in here, you can see that, again, this is the per unit cost. So you have a couple ADU options on the left. You have different density multifamily projects in the middle. And then on the right, you have single family, and it's broken out into different cost categories that you see on the right-hand side. So you can see that the costs are broken down into hard construction, land, development fees, which would include application fees, air and water quality mitigation fees, etc., financing. And then when you come over here, you can select an action and it will reduce the bars. And so for ground lease, that's essentially taking out the cost of land. So again, you can see that this area in orange just essentially disappears. For, let's see, like donated coverage, we'll take out the cost of development rights for the multifamily bars a bit. And then when you start to select quite a few, you can see that the cost to develop comes down quite a bit. And so a couple of caveats with this. I presented this to the Mountain Housing Council funders last week. And I just want to make sure that everything is clear with this, just because this was something that we use for kind of hypothetical purposes, but this isn't based on a project that we have actually seen on the ground. So this was, again, using pro forma data that we had from 2018, and we sort of extrapolated that with what we were hearing from developers. And so this, I just want to make clear that this shouldn't be used, in replacement of a pro forma that you would do for a project. But I think we would love to kind of get to that point of where we can work with developers to further refine this data to see, what actually was your on the ground cost. And so this could be based on an actual project. Another caveat is that these are based on projects that, hypothetical projects that are in the works on the South Shore. So the data would likely be, slightly different for the North Shore, probably a little bit higher, as well as for Truckee. And this is assuming that this is within the Tahoe Basin. So if you're looking at Truckee, other fees may or may not apply. And let's see, I think that's it. Stacey, I would love to open it up for questions if we want to do that.
Sure, we have time for one or two questions.
Okay.
If you have a question, you can raise your hand and I can call on you. Looks like your information must have been super clear, which is fantastic. I just think it's so important to really recognize a couple things here. One, that most of us don't look at these kinds of pro formas every day. And so, there's a lot of different pieces that go into this capital stack. And there's also a lot of different incentives and policies that our public agencies are looking at to try and solve this problem. We're all trying to figure out, what pieces we can move around to make it a little bit easier to create the kind of housing that our community needs. So, Alyssa, thank you to you and your team. I love that we're tracking together. I hope that we can collaborate as we do some of these postmortem reviews of projects, and you start looking at what some of these look like in different parts of our region. So thank you for presenting. And again, if anybody has a question, it looks like we do have a couple. Great tool. Is there a standard size unit for ADU multifamily units and single family homes? That is a question for you.
Yeah, for ADUs, I believe we used a 750 or no, a 500 square foot size, and for single family, it was based on a 2,400 square foot housing size, which is I think we realized that is at least on the South Shore, we realized that is a bit larger than what we typically see. But again, that was what came out of our pro forma back in 2018 that was done, that was showing if you are building a new single family home, that is kind of the size that you are shooting for in order to be able to profit off of it.
Awesome. Okay, well, again, if anybody has other questions, we've got one more. Why the low soft costs of the multifamily 90?
So the lower soft cost would be, let's see, because it's divided, so it's the same overall soft cost as the 60 unit. It's just divided by 90 units. So the proportion of soft costs to the total cost would just be lower, just because there's more units to kind of balance that out.
Question, I'm going to bundle them. And do you plan to update this tool periodically with new costs? And another one more specific, did you split out labor costs in the hard construction costs?
Yep, so labor costs are included in the hard construction costs. And we are planning to update this tool, as often as we can. I think we really were looking to use this tool as a way to prioritize what we should work on first, like kind of what has the biggest bang for our buck. But I think after meeting with the funder team last week, I think there's a lot of value for our partners here as well. So I think we would love to kind of partner with people or partner with other organizations to work to get this data, because it's actually not as easy as you or as I thought in the beginning. I thought it would be pretty easy to get this data, and it hasn't turned out to be. So I think we would love to continuously update this tool to make it more realistic, and maybe break it out by have a tab for South Shore, North Shore, and maybe Truckee if it's applicable, and kind of go from there. But I think it's a work in progress for sure.
That's awesome. So yes, Alyssa has been invited to come back to our funders committee and help maybe put some real numbers into some of this. So we just have to figure it out. But Mountain Housing Council is a platform for TRPA to share this tool and for others to be able to access it. Alyssa, is this public? Can people go play with it yet?
Yes, I can send a link to our website, which it's just embedded in our website, so you should be able to find it there.
Perfect. If you can drop that in the chat, that would be really helpful. I also would like to just call to your attention, Alyssa, that Patrick Taylor in the chat has offered 3 project pro formas. And so, Patrick, I'm interested in getting your email address as well, because I think it could really help our funders group just add to the knowledge base here. So All right, with that, I'm going to keep us moving. If there's additional burning questions, we'll make sure to capture what you put in the chat and follow up post-meeting. So with that, our next presenter is Heidi Alstead with the Martis Fund. She's been participating in our Funders Network, and she's just going to recap some of the lessons learned. There's certainly a lot more, but we just felt like, this is an important moment in time to capture some of the learnings here. And so with that, I'm going to share my screen. And again, Alyssa, thank you so much for all you're doing. All right, so I'm going to share my screen and invite Heidi to just talk us through some of these lessons learned.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Stacy. Thanks, Alyssa. It's a great tool. Some of the lessons that we learned through our group, our network group, is that, each housing development is dependent, to fund them is dependent on the project size, the type, and the developer. We also learned that, obviously, we all know that jurisdiction requirements are different throughout our region, and so are site conditions as well. So that makes a big impact in this working with this tool. And pro forma data, it's not always widely available. Developers use different formats, and of course, developers just don't hand over their pro formas for their projects as well, unless it's a public being funded by public funds. Then the pro forma becomes public knowledge. The profit that the developer makes changes with each project. It varies. And then some common frustrations, the multi-agency process, aligning those processes and the costs, it can be hard. And delays and cost increases in permanent financing. Accountability shifts and community agreements can also be at risk during that process as well. So these are just some of the things that we kind of learned over the past week with this process. And so the team will be continuously working on this and working with Alyssa. And so we're excited to bring this back to the full group as we go through this. Thanks.
Heidi, some of these things might seem intuitive, but it definitely is something that if you're not living and breathing this stuff all the time, it's worthy of noting, especially when you're in the community and you feel this sense of urgency and frustration around housing. Unwinding the different pieces that go into a successful project are really challenging. But we have good news to share. We invited our next two speakers to share new opportunities for funding in housing in our region. And our first guest is representative of the Tahoe, let me get this right, sorry, North Lake Tahoe Resort Association, Jeff Hintz. And then following Jeff will be Shauna Doherty of Town of Truckee. So with that, I will hand it over to you, Jeff, to share your good news.
Thank you. Are the slides actually up or?
Yes, sir. I'm heading that way.
Okay, I was wanting to make sure. If not, I could bring up the PowerPoint. Thank you.
Oh, yes.
Well, thank you. Well, good morning. Thrilled to be here. Jeffrey Hinn, CEO of the North Lake Tahoe Resort Association. Next slide. And wanted to update everyone on a very exciting initiative that's been a vision of our organization for years and is now coming to fruition. Just a quick, brief overview of our organization for those of you who do not know what the North Lake Tahoe Resort Association is. Really is three organizations in one. It's a chamber of commerce, and within that we have our visitor services. We're a tourism bureau or a CVB, which includes destination marketing as well as destination management, and then our resort association tied in with our business advocacy. And so that all falls under the headline of the North Lake Tahoe Resort Association. Next slide. And I'm really excited to share with you about our Tourism Business Improvement District. And for those of you not aware of what a TBID is TBID is a really exciting program that has been in place now for well over 20 years in California and spreading across the United States. It's a tool that many tourism-based organizations use to raise funds to typically either market or help capitalize on infrastructure investment that's tied into bringing in more tourism. We're using it in a much different way, and ours is a much more complex program, but one that we believe is going to achieve a lot of goals and solve a lot of issues that we've had over the years. So the businesses, the tourism-focused businesses within the North Lake Tahoe region will assess their customers a percentage based on a sale. So if it's lodging, it's a 1 or 2% assessment, and those funds go into locally controlled funds, and that's the highlights of what we have in front of you now, the 5 highlights of what a TBID means for North Lake Tahoe. It's local control. Businesses control the funds and where these funds are directed. Part of that is we're looking at helping find solutions for the workforce housing challenges that we have up here in North Lake Tahoe. And as part of the TBID funds, and I'm going to explain that in this next slide, but we have TBID funds and then we have TOT funds. Currently, our organization is funded through TOT funds. Transient Occupancy Tax is what that stands for. And so we're going to be redirecting those TOT funds for particular causes and issues such as workforce housing. Additionally, we'll have TOT funds redirected or freed up from this TBID to be directed towards traffic management, helping with traffic circulation, congestion issues that we know we face here a lot, especially during peak summer season. Some of these funds will be going to help offset tourism-related impacts for our local communities that could include supporting trash mitigation efforts. And then lastly, destination management, where a couple things that we do in destination management is making sure we're directing and trying to allocate traffic in the need periods, but also I think more importantly is influencing visitor behavior is very important when we have our visitors coming here and making sure they understand, how to be respectful to our destination. Next slide. So I talked about the TBID budget. We're projected once this TBID gets in place, and we're looking at either June 1st or July 1st. We still have a series of final due diligence steps to conduct with the county. The most difficult hurdle has been passed, crossed over about 6 weeks ago, maybe a little bit longer than that, when our business community signs a petition to approve this program moving forward. And we have to have a majority. And we are well above that majority threshold bar. And now we go forward with the final steps with Placer County to get our TBID in place, which we project right now would be between June 1st and July 1st before that program kicks in. But once it does, the TBID program is projected to raise at least $6 million annually. We believe it's about 12 to 15% higher than this number from our latest projections. And then those funds, the TBID funds, would be allocated to various programs, including economic development, transportation. We have a Zone 1, which is along the Lakeside Basin, where we'll direct funds needed where what programs and needs are in that Zone 1. We're going to direct funds to business advocacy and support. Obviously, we'll set aside funds for what we call marketing promotions and special events of the items that I talked about, where bringing people in during need times or influencing messaging of visitor behavior. So next slide. The key, go back a little bit.
I'm trying.
Well, that's okay. You can stay there, but if not, we're looking at the governance. So the unique program about our TBID, most TBIDs around the country, and there's 109 in California, we will be the 110th. Our TBID is unlike others because ours incorporates all of our tourism business sector, but the funds that we're going to be raising are going to be directed towards addressing visitor impact issues and it needs for the community. But what's also a real bonus, and I've done T-bids in other destinations. Typically, when you do a T-bid, the funds coming from your city or your county will go back to the city or the county into a general fund. Placer County's agreed to allow these TOT funds to stay within our community. And that's what I just talked about earlier, is these funds will go towards those workforce housing issues and transportation issues. And that's a huge, huge bonus. And that ties into what we're together here today at Mountain Housing Councils, because that's where Mountain Housing Council will come in to be a partner with us and help us come up with ideas and where we can direct some of those funds. As I wrap up, I just wanted to highlight the governance of a T-bid is really important because it's local control, and that means that our business community is really governing our T-bid and directing us to where to allocate the funds for implementation. So we'll have 3 levels of governance. We're going to have our T-bid board, and then we'll have 2 advisory board committees. One will be for our Zone 1 along the Lake Basin, as I mentioned earlier, and then we'll also have our general T-bid advisory committee. The next slide, please, and I think we're just wrapping up. So the governance is really going to be exceptional. Again, I explained how a transient occupancy tax, TOT, is much different than a T-bid, and the biggest is obviously local control. But the fact that we'll be able to keep the TOT that's coming now into our region that fund our organization will stay here. And that's a huge, huge bonus and a credit to the amazing working relationship and with Placer County, but the support that we get from the County Board of Supervisors and the entire team at Placer County. So our T-bid is a very exciting program that, again, we're expected to have kickoff by July 1st. And I think will be a game changer for North Lake Tahoe to address so many issues that we faced over the years. And this will start us in the right direction of starting to mitigate those and solving some of those issues. Next slide, and I believe we're wrapped. And I want to make sure that the support for this program, and this is just a very small sample of the support that we're getting from all the different business sectors throughout North Lake Tahoe that knows how important. I know me personally, I have gone out and talked to hundreds of business owners since August about this program and getting their feedback, getting their support, making sure they understand how important this program is going to be for our region. And the support has been unanimous. So I think we can go through the last couple slides. It just to also identify some of our businesses. But this is a business program that's approved by our businesses, assessed on the business's customers, and then those funds are controlled and directed by our business community and fulfilled and implemented through our organization. So I'm happy to answer any questions about our T-bid.
Awesome. Thank you, Jeff. And I just want to acknowledge that we are grateful to have an LTRA as part of the Mountain Housing Council. So we do have a couple questions, as well as some people cheering me on for all my technical difficulties. Thank you so much. How will the T-bid influence how the county allocates TOT, and also looking for some direct funds allocated for housing, if there's a sense of what that would be?
Well, probably the best way to address that is as I mentioned, the influence of the county keeping the funds of our TOT funds now that come into NLTRA to stay here and be utilized solely for workforce housing and transportation related issues is really very important. But there's also other funds that come in from the county, including the capitalization of what we call tourism master plan projects, and that will continue as well. And then the county is so supportive of our region through TOT funds, but it's not going to influence anything less. If anything, in this, as I presented, it's going to influence more by the fact that we're keeping the TOT funds here. What was that second question? I think it was tied in with Mountain Housing Council. Well, as we begin to form our key committees, and one of those is a committee that helps advise and direct those TOT funds for workforce housing and transportation, is bringing in partners like MHC to help us identify where those needs are and where we can help direct those funds to get those projects off the ground, or at least get them to completion, and then to obviously solve some of the issues. I know, talking with at least 40 or 50 business owners on this topic, all of this was a number one reason for a vast majority of the businesses to sign this program, was local control and the fact that we're freeing up funds now to start addressing issues that are impacting them, which is workforce, and trying to keep a workforce here, and not having that revolving door based on the challenges of folks trying to live at least close to the region, if not inside.
Awesome. That's
Stacey,
wonderful.
I could
Thank you. Yeah, Emily.
Stacey and Jeff, I could add just one more thing. Thanks for the great presentation, Jeff.
Sure.
Right now the county, just to clarify for, I think that was Fred's question. Right now the county contributes $4.1-ish million per year for the Resort Association contract. So by the T-bid bringing in funds that will essentially replace that contract, the county's already made an agreement with the Resort Association that $4 million will be used specifically for the housing and transportation. And that's freed up TOT funds annually. So that is a really good steady funding source for us because of this.
It's fantastic. Congratulations, everybody who worked so hard on this over time. I think it's wonderful, and just want to also point Jeff to the chat where you've got some of our partners making some comments and questions. And what I'd like
I see Supervisor Gustafson's on a call, Lindsay and Emily. So I think we'll all jump in and answer some of those questions together.
Fantastic. And with that, then direct your questions to the chat. And we're going to invite Shauna with the Town of Truckee. Perhaps she'll introduce one of our newest partners at the table as well as part of the Town of Truckee and our Measure K effort.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Shauna Doherty, the Housing Program Manager for the Town of Truckee. If you have any questions, you can always go to the Town of Truckee website and plug in housing, and you'll find my contact information after this. I'm here today with a team from the Town of Truckee. When we get to the partner updates, we'll introduce everybody, but I just have one slide to share today. Great news for housing. Measure K, and I invite Jen Calloway, our new town manager, and Yumi Don with planning, and Lindsay Romack, our new town council member, to add anything if I miss something. So real simply, as we all know, key to creating housing in our region and the Town of Truckee is having funding. Money is key, right? So we've always talked about, if we're going to really serve the spectrum of the needs, beyond what the state tax credits offer and some of the grants, we're going to need our own local ongoing funding. So a couple of years ago, Town of Truckee did some polling and decided to move forward with a transient occupancy tax increase. So as you all know, we already have a 10% tax that is on lodging, so that short-term rentals and hotel stays. And we went out to voters on November 3rd and asked if we could bump that up by 2%. And those funds, over 84% of our voters supported Measure K. Huge win. Thank you to all of you who are on this call that supported through outreach and donations, was all critical, using the platform of Mountain Housing Council. So clearly the community is aware, and especially for our Truckee voters, that housing and having ongoing funding is critical. This is a 20-year funding source. It's approximately $700,000 a year. Again, it ebbs and flows with the TOT collection, which will equate to about $14 million. What's exciting about this money is not so much the $700,000, because we all know that housing costs a lot more. It's just the ability to work collectively with our partners and also to potentially bond against this money. Is just when you have a steady 20-year pot of money, you can get creative with how you leverage that money. The fund is not specifically only for housing. So Measure K is available to serve community needs, including housing, open space, and fire. We do have an oversight committee that's in place that will serve to sort of monitor and keep sort of a citizen's view on how funds are being allocated, along with our very, competent administrative staff who's really good at managing the money. What's exciting is that we get to start using this money immediately. So starting January 1st, there's, the clock starts ticking that as we collect TOT quarterly. So in April, we'll start to see that money show up, but starting January 1st of this year is when that new fee is charged on lodging. Let's see. So we're rolling out programs as early as January 26th, going to council with ways to spend this money for on housing, and I'll talk about that a little bit during the partner update. But exciting to have this fund, particularly exciting for innovative programs that we can embark on because we're not restricted by grant requirements. So, anything else, Team Truckee, to add? Okay, thanks everyone.
Awesome. All right, I just want to take a moment before we break and stretch our legs and power up with more coffee. And I want to see everybody who is on the screen do jazz hands for our partners who have worked so hard to get funding for housing in this region. This is fantastic. We're really excited about that, y'all. All right, this is where we get a chance to just take a break. And we'd like to see you back here in 5 minutes. I will be generous and look for you at 9:14. So see you in a minute.
Might have a minute in between a couple. On a greedy break right now.
So this next half of our meeting is really designed to talk about something that we've all been waiting to move forward. And I'm very excited to introduce you to the team that is coming on board for our regional housing implementation plan. And before I do that, I just want to acknowledge the individuals who really helped with this RFP process. We had some great proposals. You can see in the chat, it was Ann Fleur Dwyer, Heidi Alstead, Shauna Doherty, Emily Vitus, and Emily Sutzer. Somewhat of the usual suspects, but in a lot of ways, this particular project is really going to inform a lot of their work. And so it was very important for them to not only look at existing similar plans and kind of pick out what they liked and what they didn't like, but also to think about, where we can innovate and customize it for our own region. And so this was a big lift because we wanted to do it right. And today you get to meet the team and see the plan. And we're going to have a breakout session specifically about how you want to engage and where we can keep the community in lockstep with us in this very important work. So with that, I'd like to introduce the team lead, Ashley Cannett. And Ashley will then introduce the rest of her team. And you will learn that some of these team members are some of our own. We actually saw this collaborative proposal as a strength, not only in the sense that they are bringing experts from different fields to inform this implementation plan, but it also is an investment in our own capacity as a region. And if the RFP Tiger team isn't a success story to the growing capacity in our region, well, then I just think you're going to see it in this project as well. So with that, Ashley, welcome. We're so happy to have you here, and take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Stacy. And it was, excuse me, I haven't spoken very much yet this morning. Really nice to get to just catch the tail end of the conversation. I can see already what a informed and collaborative group this is, and I'm really excited to be a part of it myself and excited on behalf of the whole team. So thank you for letting us take a little bit of your time this morning. My name is Ashley Cannett. I'm a principal with Economic and Planning Systems, and we're a land use and real estate economics consulting firm with deep expertise and experience in housing issues across all of the Western United States, including, mountain resort communities in Colorado, but just across the range of issues we have experience and expertise, and we're really excited to bring that to bear here. Maybe you could advance the slide for me, Christina. Christina, are you the one driving this? I think so. Okay, thank you. And we're really excited about this partnership. I should mention, going back to EPS, we have offices in Sacramento, Los Angeles, Oakland, and Denver. And while it doesn't really seem to matter where anyone is these days, our team is in the Oakland office. And we are really excited about this partnership. We've teamed up with Sierra Business Council. You guys know Steve well, and we think this is a really excellent partnership because Steve knows all of you. Steve knows the issues, and while we know a lot of the issues at the state and the regional level, I think the partnerships that Steve has already is going to add a lot of depth, and I think we're going to be able to move more quickly, building on what is already there. We've also partnered with Design Workshop, and Steve Knowles, Ben Fish, Lindsay. They're going to be helping us out also when we get to the point in the project where we're really looking at opportunity sites. And I don't think they're on this call, but they have very extensive experience throughout the whole area, really looking at site-specific issues. And we're going to get there, but I'm going to tell you a little bit more about how we're going to really be bringing all of these tools and bringing them to bear on very site-specific locations. So let me just say, like, I will be the principal in charge of the project, leveraging resources at EPS and making sure that all of the sub-consultant members are working collaboratively together, working collaboratively with you. Also on this call here, maybe Kate and Jake, you can raise your hands and wave. Kate is, they're both senior associates at EPS. Oh, actually, Jake's in our LA office. And Kate is going to be the project manager, and Jake is going to be our primary analyst, helping us out with the housing needs assessment. And Steve, do you want to take a moment to just, I know everyone knows you, but talk a little bit about how you're going to be internally organized with Brittany and Jill? Oh, you're muted, though.
You would think I would have learned that by now. Yeah, so we are super excited to be working on this project, and particularly to be working with EPS and Design Workshop, both firms we've long respected. Sierra Business Council's key role in this is going to be the public engagement plan, which includes both engagement with local jurisdictions and with Mountain Housing Council members and with the general public. So we have a very kind of aggressive and deep public engagement plan envisioned for this project. I'll be the project lead, but I'll be working very closely with both Brittany Bennessy and Jill Sanford in our office to be scheduling technical advisory committee meetings, a series of community interviews, and kind of deep one-on-one conversations with people about what is actually achievable within a regional housing action plan. So Jill will be primarily responsible for outward kind of facing public engagement and outreach, and Brittany kind of working with me on the technical advisory committee and the stakeholder interview process and engagement with the local jurisdictions. We're really focused on figuring out in this process what is doable, what's achievable, and what's politically viable within the period of time that the action plan is intended to address. So as a former California governor once said, action, action, action. This is about getting bricks and mortar in place, right? We really want this to focus on getting people housed as quickly as possible. We're really committed to closely collaborating and working with the jurisdictions directly and with the respective staff members at the jurisdictions in order to figure out exactly what their needs are and make sure that the action plan mirrors the needs and the desires of the local government. And then finally, I wanted to point out we're really committed to leveraging existing data and not being redundant in this process. It's really critical to us that we get all of that data together and we go deeper in the places where it will actually lead to action. So look forward to working with all of you on this, and we think it'll be great.
Thank you. Okay, next, Christina. And we'll go just briefly, making sure that we leave time for questions and answers. We want to just share a little bit about the scope. I know you have it in your packet as well. But we've got, we've divided this work into phases that are not necessarily sequential. They're really happening simultaneously in most cases. And just to focus sort of on our end product first, where we're really headed and what is really exciting about this work is this implementation plan that we end up with. And we want to do deep dives into 3 pretty ready sites. And we really want to test and illustrate a process to achieve housing. So piggybacking on what Steve just said, we know there's been a lot of analysis. We know there are a lot of toolbox matrices out there. We know there have been a lot of surveys conducted. We know that. There's a lot of really, really excellent, careful thinking out there already that's well documented and available to us, and we want to use that. What we think is missing is how do we take the real value that we think we're adding is how do we take all of that work that's been done, all of the knowledge that exists, in this very group of people even, and really translate that to getting housing built on these sites. how do we do that? What are the processes? Who are the people that need to sign off? What are the tools that we leverage? What are the funding sources and the financing mechanisms that can be leveraged and layered? But how do we get there? And we want to create this plan that really, every site is different. Unfortunately, that's the hard work here. But a process that helps us move through all of those steps so that we're just that much closer to achieving housing. And so through all of that, that's sort of where we end up. There's, of course, project management and regular check-ins with the team as we move through this. We do think we need to refresh the workforce housing needs assessment that was last done, by BAE back in 2016. We know that the really interesting stuff that's been happening in the region has been, it's not reflected in all the publicly available data that's just put out there, right? It's the last year that's really been, who knows? But we still want to have a common narrative and a common understanding of where we are with housing issues in the region. So we're going to be refreshing that housing needs assessment, really focusing on the data that helps us tell the story. And we're going to bring all of this into a digital format so that it can be available on the website and it can stay fresh. And we're just going to try to keep that really flexible so that it's a resource you have, over time. Public engagement, Steve described some of that, and we have a little bit more detail on the next slide. But this is critical. We don't want to. We want the knowledge. We want everyone's best thinking about this. And while there's a lot that's out there, we want to bring it to the specifics of these sites and make sure we're reflecting everyone's best and most current thinking. And I'm going to not say too much about it on this slide because I'll focus on it a little bit more on the next slide. And then the policy and technical analysis is sort of the heart of it. That's the evaluation of the existing tools, evaluation of emerging tools. We want to really integrate all of the public engagement and make sure that these aren't siloed efforts. And that's going to result in these pitch sheets, this implementation plan, and this sort of focus on these 3 sites. Next, please, Christina. So public engagement, I'll say a bit about this, and Steve, if there's anything important that I leave out, please help me out. But we're focused on making sure we reach out to people who are involved at every stage of housing. And so we're going to be forming a stakeholder group, which is going to be comprised of approximately 20 members. I think maybe there's a job description in your packet, potentially. And this stakeholder group is going to meet periodically, but you're really the policy drivers helping us stay on course from a policy perspective. We're also going to have a technical advisory committee that's formed, and that will be composed of a subset of stakeholder groups. It'll be a smaller group, a little bit more nimble. We'll meet a little bit more frequently, more frequent check-ins. But so those are 2 groups so far. And then the community outreach is really focused on an employer or a community survey. And then approximately 30 interviews. I think Steve has called them social interviews in the scope of work, just to make sure that we're, reflecting input from a wide variety of people. There's also going to be the social media campaign, which will be informed by, what we learn and what we think the key issues are throughout the process. And I think one of the very first things we're going to be doing is really laying out the specifics of this plan. That is part of our work. And then, of course, recruiting for the stakeholder group. So those 2 things will happen really right off the bat. Steve, do you want to add any? You'd kind of discussed it a bit before, but I don't want to leave anything out.
Yeah, the only thing I would add is that it is really important to us that we get actually a subset of developers involved in both the social interview process and in the stakeholder advisory group. So we'll be reaching out to many of you to use your contacts to try to make sure that we do have the private industry implementers at the table as well, which we think is really critically important to getting to getting a good set of outcomes. So
yeah, exactly.
Thanks.
All right, next, Christina. And here I've described in part, but these are the pitch sheets, right? So this is sort of the end deliverable. This is the deliverable we leave Stacy with so that she can keep, working on all of these sites and making sure that we're continuing to progress our objectives here. So while our 3, ready sites haven't been, we haven't committed to them, they're not completely identified yet. The thought is that we want to really capture diverse areas and diverse needs and circumstances. So preliminary thoughts are, something in Kings Beach where there's been a tremendous amount of investment already, sort of an infill site, if you will. Something in the North Star area that lets us tackle like employee and seasonal type issues. And then a site potentially the Truckee Donner Summit area. And although I think maybe Stacy can add a little bit about this, but I think we'll go through some process to figure out what those sites are going to be. But that's our preliminary thinking right now. And we are going to be looking at all of the tools that are out there and tools that are emerging. We're going to be coordinating, with colleagues in Colorado, and we're just going to be bringing it all to bear and seeing what do we have to play with here, if you will. And we are, this is where it's really important that all of the community engagement really gets focused in on these sites. We're not surveying just for the sake of surveying. We really want to bring it to bear here. Like, what do we do with this information that we've learned from all of the surveys and the community feedback? And then we want to think through all of these strategies. Really, how does it all come together? And through that, we're going to demonstrate a process that can be replicated for future sites. It's going to have to do with partnerships. It's going to have to do with regulatory and policy tools, financing mechanisms, yield, in terms of like capacity of the site, which demographic cohorts are we addressing? Is this rent ownership? Is this workforce? Is this otherwise? But all of it is to, come together and make sure that we're really meaningfully addressing the region's housing needs. And there's a lot of flexibility still about what these pitch sheets will look like. We have some preliminary ideas, but mostly we need it to be something that is really tells a story about these sites and then is a useful tool going forward, a useful model going forward for the region. And next. Project timeline, there's a lot of flexibility here too, but we do want to compress our effort enough that there is momentum. So we're almost underway. This is not quite the kickoff, but we'll try to get that scheduled, I think, in the next, week or so. You can see here the way that all of the phases kind of overlap, right? We're not just moving from one thing to the next, but we want to make sure that there's room for iteration as we progress. But we'll start right off with the housing needs assessment refresh. The public engagement, it'll take us a bit of time just to really, dot all of our I's and cross all our T's. Plan is going to look like, but that will happen throughout the process. And technical analysis is also going to be a really concurrent effort, and we're going to start it early because we want to be making sure that our public engagement is related to the policy and the technical analysis that we'll be doing. And then phase 5 is the final deliverable, and that will be sort of towards the end. And we'll see how we'll have to be a little bit flexible on public engagement. We'll want to take advantage of existing fora or meetings, that sort of thing. But this is how we see this laying out. And I think that's it. I do want to turn it over back to Stacy, see how she wants to handle breakout rooms or questions and answers. Thank you.
Fantastic, Ashley. this is such an amazing moment in time, and just to underscore how we kind of got here. If Mountain Housing Council's first 3 years, we often refer to it as 1.0, and now we're in 2.0. If Mountain Housing Council 1.0 is really about building relationships and trust across all of these different agencies and partners in the region, myth busting, and educating ourselves on like what the complexities are of our own region, and where there's opportunity to move forward. 2.0 is all about implementation. And I'm going to emphasize the term implementation plan and not action plan for a couple reasons. One is we've decidedly said that 2.0 is all about implementation and building structure and processes and partnerships and collaborations around implementation and funding. But action plans are found in housing elements. Action plans are lists of actions that we can take into account. Implementation is really how we apply those actions and those incentives that we're identifying. So coming out of this, as Ashley just kind of acknowledged, is really trying to solve for what we learned in 1.0, which is more than just the actions we can take, but how they leverage each other, how they are combined to really move projects forward. We've spent a lot of time looking at those projects that are stuck or have been delayed. This particular strategy that you're learning about right now around an implementation plan, the RFP team really embedded a lot of thinking about that. And at the end of the day, it's about finding the right capital stack that includes incentives, finding the right types of developers that can build the kind of housing we're looking for, creating some streamlined processes across all of these agencies that are powerful for our region, but sometimes challenging as a developer to navigate. And then finally, creating community readiness so that when change happens, there's community who's waiting with open arms for these solutions. And all those things simultaneously trying to come together have kind of at different times accelerated in certain areas and gotten stalled out in others. So this particular strategy is really designed to kind of bring it all together and create a replicable process so that whether it's in Placer County or Town of Truckee or Nevada County, we have now kind of built a muscle in 3 different places to try to pull these things together in a process. So just wanted to recap that because sometimes when looking at the density and complexity of a plan like this, it's hard to kind of float back up on the top and go, why are we doing this? And at the end of the day, also, you'll recall that we need new data. If you don't have the right information in front of you, it's really hard to make decisions as policymakers and strategic decisions as a community. So with that, thank you. What we're going to do is break out into 15-minute breakout session, and then we will. We have 3 questions for you, it's primarily how can we best engage our community in this process? What ideas do you have? What existing community level infrastructure is in place that we should be thinking about? Whether it's digital or even if in the future it's in real time, help us start to think about how to best engage our community and think about it across the community. Don't think about the usual places that we're all working together. Those are going to be obvious to us. And we want a diverse engagement across the community. So we're looking to you for some insights. How would your organization like to support this effort? How will you think through actionable items within your own organization? Are there updates to your board? Do we engage your board in a unique way? What about your constituents? What about your newsletters, things like that? And are you interested in serving on the stakeholder group? Do you want to lean into this? This is going to be a fantastic project that is going to take up the bulk of our year together as Mountain Housing Council. So, some of you are already serving on working groups and we respect that. Maybe there's somebody in your organization that you want to see participate in the stakeholder group. Maybe you have a neighbor who has opinions about this. There's just so many ways that we can engage the community, and we're looking to our partners here to help us think that one through. If you have burning questions about this project, I would ask you to, again, drop them in the chat and let us follow up with you so that we can really use our time here to get in the work together. Okay, so with that, Christina is going to start divvying us up into working groups. Please assign one person who will report out from the working group. So just take some notes while everybody's brainstorming, and then when we come back, each of you will ask one person from each group to report out. All right, and Christina's put a link to the slides so you can see those questions. But again, it's all about how do we best engage the community? How's your organization going to get involved? And do you want to be a part of the stakeholder group? Okay, thank you.
The questions will be in the chat as well, and the slides you can refer back to Ashley's presentation if you had any questions. I'm going to open the room.
I was wondering if you were going to have us hop in there.
Yes, I didn't put you in a room. Stacey, I didn't put you in a room.
That's okay.
And Roy, I didn't put you in a room, but I can. The rest
And
of
then the
people on
other
call-
people who are here just haven't accepted a breakout. Okay, got it. Very good. Great job, Ashley, Jake, Kate. We're super excited.
We're excited too. I think maybe while we have you, should we check out our calendars for a kickoff? I don't know if
Happy to do that.
Okay.
And a kickoff for the so just be aware, I'm in the process of hiring my replacement in this particular aspect of my job. I'm not a program officer. We haven't had a lead on program. I will continue to be engaged in this process and oversee it and make sure things are connecting like we want to. But hoping that some of our groups had some of our community members in it with brilliant ideas. Let's see. I want to see all these wonderful faces. See, this is what happens with a breakout. You got to show your face. So good. Awesome, awesome. Okay. I think everybody's back, Christina. Wonderful. Why don't we go ahead and just how should we do this? Maybe raise your hand if you were a designated reporter outer, and we'll call on you. Hey, I see Jerusha. We'll start there. Perfect.
Great, thank you. Well, we started off a little off topic, but we ended up getting back on topic. In terms of engaging community, I feel like our group felt that it was really important to involve like a very broad subset, including the developers, make sure we're involving the Latinx community, just making sure we have like a portal where people can really be informed, whether that's through, because I know like the NLTRA, Placer County, Nevada County, Truckee Chamber, all these different entities have great outreach and beautiful presentation in that. And so to really work with them at once to get that message across in sort of a condensed fashion, and also to make sure that, there's marketing budget to make sure that it's done in a very concise and easy to read and understand way. I think, there's a lot coming at all of us right now. We're all extremely saturated. And so I think we just need to work on making sure that we're outreaching and engaging with the community in just a really focused way. Anyone else from our group have anything on that? And then let's see, the second part, what was the second question, Stacy?
How might organizations get engaged? How might our Mountain Housing Partners organizations get engaged?
Yeah, I think that, sort of tied into what I already said. I think it's just a matter of making sure we know what we're asking for, we're asking the right people, and then we're presenting it in a way that's easy for the community to digest.
Excellent. And then lastly, Christina will collect your names, who wants to join the stakeholders group, and that is included in the poll that we will send out at the end of this meeting to get your feedback on the content, the facilitation, the timing, and how you want to engage. So with that, thank you, Jerusha. Who else would like to go? Okay, Anne, and then Scott. Great.
Hi. All right. So we had Hardy Bullock had a few comments at the beginning, then he had to jump off, but he indicated that he would be happy to help with county communication, and has also been pretty active with social media outreach and information. And the county has been really working on doing more of that as well. So they'd be happy to help send information out and send outreach through those channels. He suggested and indicated that he could reach out to Brian Foss to see if he would be willing to participate in the stakeholder outreach. And then we talked a little bit more about community engagement, and didn't get a whole lot past that afterwards. But one of the things we talked about is that MAP has a monthly newsletter that has good readership and could be a good avenue for sending out updates, information, and engaging people. And then also about a need to reach out to a lot of the newer community members that there's because of the large influx of work from home people that have recently moved into our community, that's an opportunity to reach out to people and get them engaged and have them help in solving issues and filling the housing gap. And then another thought was doing public webinars to help educate people about what is happening in the region, and also how they can get involved. And one specific thought about that would be to do a joint agency sponsored webinar about the different housing projects that are currently underway and kind of the process that has been involved in those, timelines, costs, etc. And kind of get people to understand a little bit what's happening and what those processes are to get things built on the ground. I think that's Justine Marmesh also indicated she would be interested in joining the stakeholder outreach group or stakeholder group. Anyone else from my group have something to add?
Good job, Anne. Thank you so much. We'll go Scott and then Emily Vitus.
All right, thanks, Stacy. Yeah, we had a great, lively group. So lots of notes here, and Christina, I can follow up with a separate note sheet probably too. We started out with realizing that we really need a variety, whatever meetings or ways of sharing we have, we need to start out with a variety of days and times because our workforce and our community isn't always able to meet at the same time. So that's just kind of a technical thing to note there. Where we engage is an element as well. So right now we seem to be only engaging online through Zooms, which works. And the benefits of that are that we can record the message and then share them out separately through different organizations. Yet we all kind of realize that there's a large audience that doesn't engage that way. So we'd like to find ways when allowable or when we can to get boots on the ground. And Cassie had some great examples of just with the downtown group, she finds it most effective when she can really, or the groups can really go door to door and talk to the employees and talk to the business owners and just have the direct ask. We talked about mechanisms to help share the information for the program, like a leave behind. So the leave behind itself can increase awareness for the program, but also direct to a call to action, like take this survey. So, I think we talked a lot about when we can or how we would start more in-person events, whether it be, and I know we're still kind of very restricted, but if it allows, we'd like to be able to have group meetings or awareness meetings and boots on the ground. We talked about the usual social channels. So there's a lot of, certain audiences get their primary information through the social media channels. So that's a big yes for some of the audiences. We also talked about making sure we consider how best to do our bilingual audiences or Latinx audiences at the forefront all in everything we do. Then we moved over to question number 2 is how then differently can each of us help? And I think we talked about the school district a lot as being a source for both the workforce and families and kids. So having that mechanism or having their channels so that we can email out and connect was a great idea. Amanda talked about the Recreation and Parks District having access to maybe 16,000 emails right there, and then another way to kind of send the message out, and not just the public schools, but maybe the private and charter schools as well. I think we're on our list. Brett talked about Board of Realtors and his channel, and that he'd be able to help get access to Board of Realtors. Sarah talked about transportation and buses, and if we have this leave behind, can we also have the buses either do a campaign around whatever we're asking for there. and Patty had a nice accent on, she has unique access to the visitors, and many times the visitors want to know what's going on in town, and they're often in a transition and wanting to live here and be a part of the community. So the idea of a leave behind for the program, a rack card of sorts, would be effective in the real estate area. The Resort Association group also talked about having leave behinds. So whatever the program is, right? So we have plenty of ways to get those channels out. Everybody seems like it's a good idea on that one. Family Research Center, Community House, Boys and Girls Clubs. And then I'll finish up by saying, let's make sure we understand the audiences and clarifying who the audiences are and how they might want to receive the information differently. We touched on that with social media for 20 and 30 somethings, but also the walking around and direct engagement or through email. But if we identify those audiences who we want to engage, then there probably would be different mechanisms to kind of reach them best. And then we have lots of people who are interested in engaging, and I think you'll just follow up with the list.
Awesome. Leave it to our communications guy to be very thorough. Thank you. Those gave us a lot of really great ideas. I love the bus one. Emily.
Thanks, Stacy. Hi, everybody. I would say our general conversation was very similar to Scott's team. Our group was made up of North Tahoe PUD and the real estate industry, Sugar Bowl, the Workforce Housing Agency, and some public members. We discussed the importance of, again, on the ground, face-to-face communications, if we're in a place so we can start to do that in the next few months. The importance of kind of the blanket or umbrella approach where we're looking at virtual meetings, surveys, print and digital communications. We talked about the importance of clear, succinct communications. Monica with Sugar Bowl was talking about how important it is to ask who is receiving the communication or give them the action. So make it very, very clear what we're asking of them and how they can respond or act on the ask. Importance of engaging real estate professionals, and they have so much kind of on the ground communications and experience and are in the community looking at housing on a daily basis. Talked about our districts that send out bills. Can we include print info in those bills and some mail out information in those bills? Then we got into the more partner specific conversation. North Tahoe PUD again has that bill mail out. They're reaching out to thousands of people. They're communicating with their entire public, so they're able to help with their webpage information and also potential mail out information. Monica with Sugar Bowl shared that they would love to reach out to their employees and potentially engage the homeowners up at Sugar Bowl as well in this conversation. On the workforce housing front, we represent 4 member agencies that each have their own communications channels, as well as 1,700 employees that we would love to share this information with and engage them in any way that we can. And then on the stakeholders group, we did not get to that final question, so we'll need Christina to reach out and make sure that she checks in on interest there. But I think that there may be some attendees in our group that would love to participate.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Okay, we have 3 more report outs. I'm going to call on Brittany, then Jasmine, and then Shauna Purvines will close us out.
Thanks, Stacy. Hi, all. So our group covered a lot of the similar community engagement ideas that have been reported out. I think 2 of the items that were somewhat unique to our group was talking about developing an incentive for survey respondents to make sure that we're really reaching a wide breadth of audience, a full scope of community members, and just making sure that our findings include broad representation. And then Allison had a great question on, whether we have in the past or should consider developing a framework for Mountain Housing Council community engagement, so that when community engagement needs come up, whether they're related to this process and this project or advocacy or other community engagement needs, that we know who's going to send out a social post, who's going to put something out in their email list, who's going to, put a rack card out in their office when we're back in person. So just a thought for the group in developing a framework and strategy so that we can be really consistent in our messaging and use timing really effectively and efficiently, getting things out all at once and really reaching that broad audience. In terms of how organizations can support the effort, we had a number of current stakeholder group members and folks who worked on the RFP within our group. So a lot of those agencies are already involved. But looking at how we can post, do outreach, standardize our communication process was another part of that discussion. And then in terms of the stakeholder group involvement, we have a lot of interest, just the need to determine representation from the town, from TMA. It sounds like MAP would hopefully be interested. That would be great. And then an offer from the collaborative to help put out the word to their network in case we are in need of additional members for the stakeholder group.
Awesome. Jasmine.
Not a lot of other things that haven't already been mentioned in our group. I think one of the things coming up with some standard toolkit messaging, perhaps through the stakeholder group through Mountain Housing Council, that could be then given to all the existing networks. Town of Truckee, Board of Realtors were in our group, and so they have pretty far reach of access to members. And if we had standardized messaging, then that could be sent out. And then also, of course, engaging, thinking about the target audience. So the J1s, the seasonal workforce, the ski resorts, the local ski shops, and then engaging the developer with the community, with the neighborhoods that the developments would potentially be going in. So it's more of a collaboration effort and not coming up with a design and then presenting it to the neighborhood and then having it be rejected. And I think that was really it. Everything else everyone has already touched on.
Awesome. Thank you, Jasmine. Shauna Purvines, and then I think our final speaker is Teresa Crimmins.
Thank you. Yeah, so many good ideas already out there. I think maybe the only two that we discussed a little bit about that I didn't hear directly touched on was a focus in on the like our larger corporations, our ski. We had a great example this morning of the Telluride and kind of the unique housing opportunities that may fit their needs a little bit better. So working, directly with them, and then kind of the coordination with projects and applicants that are there today and are maybe, struggling or seeing hurdles getting through some of the jurisdiction requirements and doing some very focus and work on that. And then everybody that was in our little breakout group, generally supported being a part of the stakeholders.
Awesome. And finally, Teresa.
Hi, I'm Teresa Crimmins. I'm with Sierra Community House. And our team spent a fair amount of time first getting clear on how this project differs from kind of where we've been. And because there was that need for clarity amongst that group, I thought it was worth mentioning here that it seems like maybe there's, and I think Shauna brought up, the need for sort of a fact sheet about this process and how it's different from where we've been, lest anybody think, wait, isn't that what Mountain Housing Council was doing all along? And so to really highlight that we're updating where we are and where we've been with numbers, and that we're really focusing in, and those who are closer to this can wordsmith this to be better, more accurate than where I'm at, but that we're really focusing on the how we're going to get to the goals, our mutual goals, and then also to get the community input to sort of check in on where we are and where we're going to make sure that we're all still aligned. So that was an important piece that we spent some time talking about. And then when it came to the engagement itself, there was some emphasis on the importance, whether it's with a process like this or an on-the-ground development, that initial communications be consistent with what the actual sort of follow-through is, lest a group feel like they kind of got a bait and switch in terms of what they thought was happening and then seeing something different coming down the pike. I will exercise my reporter outer status. This was not talked about in the group, but also for me to say that I think mobile home owners are a very unique group that needs specific outreach. They're a unique combination of both invested because they are mobile home owners and they are vulnerable because they do not actually own their land. So I'll just put a plug in for that group. There was definitely a willingness to share out information amongst the partners that were in the group, which is wonderful through their channels. And we're also glad that there's a survey because we didn't get a chance to commit to participating in the stakeholder group. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Teresa. Okay, so we have a lot of really great ideas and just want to acknowledge that Ashley has left the call, but we have some of her team members on it. And I know that Christina and I and Steve will all report back on these wonderful ways to engage our community. And with that, I want to just leave you with one more ask. So we will have a poll that we want you to complete. We'll put a link to it in the chat and we'll also send it to you by email. And inside that is also the sign up. So please do that. And then also I've had some outreach on the sites that we're going to select to kind of work this process. And you know, what is ideal. We've really looked at public sites. If you recall in 1.0, we identified a map of public sites available and kind of filtered out ones that don't make sense because maybe it's too steep and you can't build there, et cetera. So we have a list to start with, but some of you have reached out and said, you know, I have a great idea of a site that can be your pilot for, you know, developing these processes. And so if that's the case, I'd love to hear from you so that we can start to put together a list, because even if the site that is on your mind isn't, and if it's not yours, then I would hesitate to say we should do this on somebody else's property. I think we're looking for, you know, land or sites that have a certain readiness to it, but still send me, if you own a piece of property or you have something in mind, send it to me. We'll document the process of how it gets selected. And please know that what our focus is really how to bring all the different pieces of our community together to create a readiness for housing to get built and to avoid some of those delays and stuck projects that we've seen over the years. So with that, we're going to move into partner updates. We have about 25 minutes for this portion of our time together, our meeting. And I want to also point out, and maybe Christina, you could put the partner the partner highlights from the website, the mountainhousingcouncil.org. Oh, we skipped the working group update. Oh my gosh. I am so sorry. Thank you for keeping me honest in this. And I will tell you that our timing is getting tight. And so I want to hear from the state policy group, and I know you do too, because this is super important. Then we're going to go to our partner updates. But the partner updates, we are really relying on you to start putting that in the website so that we can see it all the time. And so we will have less time to do our partner updates, but there are some key updates that I know we're going to want to hear. So with that, Steve, I'm so sorry. I'm falling down on my job today. I apologize, everyone, but we're going to get through this. So let's hear from Steve.
That's okay. Can we bring the slide deck up, please?
Yep.
Brittany, do you want to start or do you want me to?
I'm happy to start with some quick housekeeping. All right, so Christina, we can hop to the second slide. Hi, everyone. Brittany Benessy here, Government and Community Affairs Director with Sierra Business Council. So we had a great kickoff policy working group meeting at the end of the year, and our next working group meeting is scheduled for January 25th. Each meeting between now and May is going to be held on the last Monday of the month, and we would be thrilled to have you join. If you weren't able to meet our kickoff meeting or have been considering joining the policy working group, it would be great to have you. we'll be moving to an every other month or as needed schedule following the really heavy season of the legislative session. SBC is working with input provided by the working group at the kickoff meeting on our draft policy platform, which we will be providing the working group ahead of the meeting at the end of the month, and hopefully finalizing or getting to a draft 2 state during that meeting. And then we are still planning on hosting some legislative meetings. We're getting into the process of scheduling those meetings. We identified at our working group meeting some of the key legislators that we want to reach out to. And it's definitely looking like it's going to be a virtual housing advocacy event or virtual lobby day that we're hoping to hold in March. So more to come on that. We can head to the next slide, Christina. So really quickly going to run through a few major things that have come out since the last time we all met. The federal COVID-19 relief package, which includes $25 billion for rental and utility payment assistance. The outcomes of the governor's proposed budget that was released earlier this month. And then talking about the potential eviction moratorium extension, the outlook for that, and a couple of other policy updates from a Senate housing package that has been released. And with that, I will pass it off to Steve to talk COVID relief.
Great. Next slide, please. So as many of you, I think, have been following in the news, the Congress passed a federal COVID relief package 2 weeks ago. Included in that package is $25 billion in rental and utility payment assistance. Of that $25 billion, about $2.6 billion of that is coming to California. And that's going to be split into 2 pots. $1.2 billion goes to entitlement jurisdictions, which are jurisdictions of above 200,000 people for direct distribution. And the remaining $1.4 billion goes to the state for distribution to the rest of the jurisdictions. So this is really great news because it's about half of what California's current backlog on rent payments is. So it's important to note that since the adoption of the federal relief package 2 weeks ago, there is a new package proposed by the incoming Biden administration that has proposed an additional $30 billion in rent relief. So expect a second wave of this for later in the year. To put this in kind of perspective, the Federal Reserve Bank of Philadelphia and the National Council of State Housing Agencies estimates that California's rental debt at this point, that is as of January 1st, was between $3.7 billion and $5.6 billion. So the remainder, $1.4 billion, they're working on rules for that right now, but that funding is likely going to be distributed to local governments for distribution similar to what they did with CARES Act funding after the second package passed earlier in the year. So next slide, please. So the other big event was the release of the governor's budget last week. And actually, this is a really interesting story. Number one, I think everyone remembers that the projections were that California was going to be way behind in revenue this year. Well, state revenue is approximately $16 billion higher than was anticipated in June of 2020, which was largely due to state income tax revenues. So they ended up with more money coming in than they anticipated. And that led to a really interesting approach by Governor Newsom's office, which was to propose in his budget what he's calling an early action framework. So they're going to take a portion of that $16 billion and they're going to appropriate it in the 2020 budget as kind of an additional appropriation, and hopefully do that within the next 4 to 6 weeks. So the governor's budget proposed this early action plan that would do a mid-year appropriation of funding to use a big chunk of that $16 billion. Within the governor's budget framework, there's $426 million for the Affordable Housing Sustainable Community Program. That's there largely because the cap and trade auction revenues came in higher than anticipated as well. So that number went up relatively substantially. There's an additional $500 million in the low-income housing tax credit funding. So with the current federal appropriation to that as well, that means the current pot for low-income housing tax credits this year is $938 million, which is amongst the highest it's been in the last decade. There is an appropriation of $331 million to the California Housing Finance Administration for direct mortgage assistance for people who are behind in rental in their mortgage payments, rather, which is good because that was not covered in the COVID relief bill. So there is a strategy for doing mortgage assistance. And then there's also $500 million in a new program called the Infill Infrastructure Grant Program. The intent of this program is to help developers with infrastructure necessary for doing multifamily and in many cases affordable and or low-income housing. $250 million of that is in the Early Action Fund, and the other $250 million is in the full 2021-22 budget. And then the other thing that is included within the budget is a recommendation from the governor that the mortgage moratorium or the rental moratorium be extended. So the governor's budget specifically asked for an extension of AB 3088, which was the rent moratorium that is currently set to run out January 31st. So with that, I'll hand it back to Brittany.
Thanks, Steve. We can head to the next slide. So that eviction moratorium extension of AB 3088 right now is looking like it's most likely going to be carried by AB 15, authored by David Chu, who's really been a leader on the eviction moratorium issues. This bill mirrors AB 3088 and adds a few different, I apologize, someone woke up during our meeting. It adds a few additional tenant protections within AB 3088 structure. So it would prohibit credit agencies from negatively scoring renters who had COVID-19 related debts, and would take additional actions against landlords or would limit actions landlords could take against tenants, including seeking debt relief and eviction actions. SB 3, I wanted to briefly mention. This is another bill authored by Senator Ana Caballero, which would be a extension of AB 3088 through the end of March. This isn't getting a whole lot of attention within the legislature, but is the Senate's version of the bill. Both bills, it should be clarified from the slide, do require that a tenant document their COVID relief needs under penalty of perjury, but Caballero's bill includes it explicitly in the general language, which is why the media has really taken note of it when you see it reported. Additionally, 20 legislators sent a letter to the Assembly and Senate leadership requesting $5 billion of unallocated funds be used for rental and utility payment assistance. It does not include a request for mortgage payment assistance, and appears to incorporate the federal COVID relief money. So it would be an additional $2.4 billion. But it shows a real priority from legislative leaders on this issue, and we could see additional state funding coming down the pike. On AB 15, something particularly of note for the group is that a joint hearing, committee hearing, was quickly scheduled this week. It's a joint hearing of the budget subcommittee hearing on housing and the Committee on Housing and Community Development. That hearing is going to be happening this coming Tuesday January 19th starting at, I believe, 2 p.m. There was not enough time to get a formal letter of support written, but Sierra Business Council will be virtually attending the meeting and voicing our support for AB 15. If Mountain Housing Council members would like to call in and voice their support, it's a very easy process. I'd be happy to provide information on how to do so. Or you can send me your organization's information and I can include you in a list of supporters as I call into the meeting. We could also consider whether the Mountain Housing Council as an entity in itself would be interested in voicing support. AB 15 is definitely the vehicle that if we're going to get this eviction moratorium passed before the January 31st deadline, that's going to be the vehicle. So I think it's imperative for those who know what risks we have if this eviction moratorium is not extended, that we show our strong support on Tuesday.
Just two final things. Number one, when we begin the meetings of the policy working group as well, I'm going to be circling back around with Mountain Housing Council members to talk about whether or not your organization has or retains a lobbyist, so that we can get all of the lobbyists of the multiple different organizations together to get a little bit more coordinated about how we're advancing kind of the policy platform this year. And then number two, here's a piece of good news. The governor's budget, not including the $2.6 billion in rental assistance, is more than $8.3 billion for housing. And my quick check is that's more than the state of California has spent for housing ever in a single budget, which is really, really interesting. So clearly the word went out after the last legislative session that housing needed to be a higher priority this year.
And the last thing I wanted to touch on was that folks might have seen that the Senate released a housing package back in December. That is something that we're closely tracking. It includes a new version of last year's SB 50 by Senator Wiener, now SB 10. It includes a CEQA streamlining bill, SB 7, and includes the structure for a significant housing bond. So something that will definitely be engaging on and updating the group on at the January 25th meeting.
Thank you, Brittany. Thank you, Steve. This should fire us up. We are at the beginning of the legislative process. We've got our ducks in a row. We're well organized. We've got an amazing team at SBC carrying us forward. This is our time to really shine, and we have a lot to be proud of as a region representing our community and the potential to really help drive some of these resources back to our community. So this is a moment to take advantage of the infrastructure that we have built together. We haven't endorsed kind of whole cloth Mountain Housing Council because we know each of your agencies have different agendas, but we are asking that you connect us to your lobbyists so they can carry our message forward, whatever your agency adopts within our platform. And we're asking for those people who like to talk and advocate and believe in this region to join this working group, because this is our moment. This is really important. And the moratorium on evictions is incredibly important to prevent more homelessness in our community and actually help stop the spread of COVID-19. And so if you need more information on that, we wrote a blog post about it, but let me just encourage you or somebody in your staff who you want to provide a professional development opportunity to get engaged with the working group. Okay. Thank you. And let's move on to partner updates. I'm going to ask that Christina manage the raise your hand if you want to go, but I am going to give Placer County and our elected officials with Placer and also the town of Truckee to go first. And then everybody else can start, because I know they always have a good list. And then everybody else can just raise your hand in there and Christina will call on you. So let's start with Placer and then we'll go to town and then we'll just let everybody start raising their hand. Thank you.
Thanks, Stacy. a lot of great work is being done and do a lot to the Mountain Housing Council and all the energy and enthusiasm. And I don't want to speak on behalf of the hard work that's going on at the staff level. So really, Shauna Purvines, our principal planner and housing manager, and Emily Setzer are going to give this update. There's a lot going on, and they are really, truly the workhorses getting it done.
Thanks, Cindy. Yeah, we really have had a lot going on. It's been actually a pretty exciting year, even with COVID. So just some real highlights in the last couple of months. One, our board did approve in December the draft housing element. This is the 6th cycle of the housing element, and we have released it to the state. The exciting part about this one is that in past, most housing elements get kind of a nice little refresh, but not really an overhaul. In this round, because of the outreach and in large part, a lot of the work that Mountain Housing Council did, we have 44 implementation programs. Of those, about 2/3 are brand new. And they're addressing some of the needs that have been raised, both, across the county, but particularly on the east side. So we're excited about that moving forward with a anticipated final adoption this spring. You heard about the T-bid. That's a really exciting news. That's what came through in December as well through the county. I'm really looking forward to being able to work with that. As was mentioned, the funding is going to stay local and be focused in on housing and transportation issues, along with other needs that are up there. And that is great news. We also will be launching here very shortly what we're calling the Housing Workforce Preservation Program. And this is what was modeled after the Veil and Deed program, where the county will be able to go in and purchase deeds on properties that will allow those properties to remain as workforce housing for up to 55 years. And then upon resale, essentially, they would continue that 55 years, so almost in perpetuity. So that's something we'll be launching out this year, and look forward to getting that off the ground. A couple of other ones. We are going to start a second round of Tahoe Basin Area Plan amendments. We're wrapping up our first round, which is really kind of a cleanup to bring it consistent with state law. And this next round is going to be focused in on really identifying those hurdles, particularly in our town center areas, on getting things developed under that new plan. And the partnership with TRPA has just been great. Crystal Jacobson will be actually taking the lead on that. And then just quickly, the last two things, and then Emily, make sure I didn't forget anything. We have had Hopkins Village has been sitting dormant with full improvements and ready to go since about 2007. Just last month or the month before last, you might, if you're around that area, saw some ground being broken and some development down there. We are starting to proceed in partnership with the builder, getting the last 40 units there built. And the agreement is that they will be built and sold for workforce housing in the area. And I think the last exciting news is we had a pre-development this last week for the Tahoe Inn, which is an older hotel motel that is along the county line by Incline Village. And the proposal is to convert that to workforce housing, about 50 units in kind of apartments or traditional rental housing, and about 50 units that would be in a more dorm style type unit. So just a lot of projects going on. Emily, if I forgot anything, feel free to jump in and let her.
Cindy will, because you forgot Dollar Hill. And
Dollar Hill. How do I forget Dollar Hill?
And Project Trophy.
Yeah, so Dollar Hill, the county is still moving forward with our Dollar Hill project, 11 acres of a mix of housing types. So, we're looking at that bridge that you saw that Stacey showed earlier, really trying to hit that. We will be out this spring. We're doing the studies right now on some of the things we already heard from the public and the neighbors on traffic and fire safety and those. So we're finishing those up, and we'll be coming out this spring with some additional community outreach and getting to some site designs that we're excited to move forward on.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you both. And Shauna, I'm going to give you a thumbs up on your backdrop. Like I said, I feel like I need to step up my game. That's beautiful. All right, Donna Doherty.
Have Jen. We're gonna go Jen, Lindsay, and then Yumi, and then me, and we'll go quickly, but we're ready.
We're going to totally relay this update. So I just wanted a chance to say hi to everybody. This is my first Mountain Housing Council meeting. So it's great to see everybody on here, and the town is very excited to continue the partnership for the next 3 years with Mountain Housing Council 2.0. We're committed to that and excited to see the work product that'll come out of that and how we can help spearhead that. And then also we are launching our employee housing survey in the next couple of weeks to get a better sense of our employee housing needs. And when I started here 2 months ago, in meeting with some of the employees, several of them, when I asked if there was anything that would cause them to want to leave employment with the town, indicated housing would be a factor in that decision, and the inability to afford housing in this area, which the town is reasonably compensated, and if it's hard for us, I can't even imagine at the workforce housing level. So we're launching that survey, and we've also been exploring the potential to join the JPA that's focused on employee housing as well. So trying to get as many areas out there and legs out there in the different fields that we can. So with that, I'm going to pass the baton to our new council member and new Mountain Housing representative, Lindsay Romack.
Hi, everybody. I'm Lindsay Romack, and excuse me, while I've been at many of these meetings previously, that was in my capacity as a staff member for Cindy Gustafson. Now I will be serving as the Town of Truckee representative from Town Council. So I'm very excited working with Shauna and Jen and Yumi. And just wanted to share that the Town Council, we will be doing our priority session at the beginning of February, where we will be looking at our Town Council priorities for the year ahead. And I know that housing has been a priority for the past few years, and we will definitely be discussing it, and I'm saying it will continue to be a priority, so that way we can continue to support, again, the great work Shauna and Yumi have been doing on some of the innovative programs. So with that, I'll pass it on to Yumi. Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Yumi. I'm a planner with the Town of Truckee, and just to give you there's no real update to the hashtag 200 in 2021, as Shauna wants me to mention. We're still under construction for 3 affordable housing projects: Frischman Hollow, the Artist Loft, and Coldstream Commons. And the town is currently processing an application for a 30-unit affordable housing project over by the regional park next to the senior apartment. So that's under review right now. We don't know when it's going to commission for their review. And we're also, our planning division is looking at the SB2 housing update, which was housing process, which our consultants are looking at different parcels of land that may be qualified for additional density. And that could potentially go to our council for review in February. So that's where we are on projects. And I'll pass it over to Shauna.
Okay. Yeah. So it's so great. I saw it one time and there were 68 people on this call. It's so exciting. I'm going to speak a little bit about 2 new programs. As you know, last March, we council approved an ADU pilot program. So we're about 8 months into that. Our goal was 15 new ADU permits. We had 60 inquiries. And we're getting set to take to council on January 26th, the 3rd component of our ADU program, which is incentives, which will be a series of grants and loans for both new ADU construction as well as a pathway for those that exist and are unpermitted to come into compliance. So it's a little bit of our version of an amnesty program. Let's see, working with Nevada County, collaborating on hiring. We just rolled out an RFP. We got 5 applicants for that RFP to create plan sets for pre-approved ADUs and affordable houses. So I know you guys have heard about that, but that's happening. I will say, a shout out to Placer County, who had 100 ADU permits. Shauna forgot to mention that. 100 ADU permits last year. They have a staff person that works pretty much full time on that, and who is wonderful, and I talked to, and is probably a lot of the reason that, along with the relaxed standards, that they're getting so many. Most of them are down the hill, but huge volume increase. So that's exciting. Second program that we rolled out in October, mid-October, was the long-term rental grant program, which is a partnership with Landing Locals to provide $3,000 grants to homeowners who either switch from short-term renting or underutilized homes to rent full-time 12 months a year to employees in the school district. Since October, we've signed up 5 homes, and there's 3 more that will be activated in starting February 1st. So our goal with that is 25 a year, and by February we'll have 8. So we're pretty excited about that. And again, all that information, trying to continue to update the housing page on the town website. So check there for updates. Thanks. I'm done.
It looks like we have Emily's hand up.
And then if you'd like to give a partner update, please raise your hand.
Thanks, everybody. The last update I gave, I believe, was at the September meeting, and since then we have completed our employee housing needs assessment. So that was a 4-month process working with Wendy Sullivan and her team at WSW Consulting, surveying our roughly 1,700 employees to really understand the housing needs. Just a few kind of really interesting statistics I'll share with you that came from the survey. Roughly 16% of our employees said that they are considering leaving employment partially due to housing. So similar to what Jen just shared with us with the town of Truckee, a number of employees stating that housing is too much of a struggle and they are potentially looking at leaving the area because of it. 43% found it very difficult to find housing the last time they tried to find housing. So this issue has been here for a while. It's not going away. 48% of our employees are cost burdened, meaning they're spending more than 30% of their incomes on housing. And then not necessarily housing related, but 50% of our employees said that they were adversely affected by COVID. So something that we want to look at as we're talking about housing solutions and long-term issues that are related to COVID that relate to housing. Of interest also, a lot of our employees were interested in renting and buying from their employer. So we were a little nervous about the employer connection to housing when we had initial conversations with our employees, but there is an interest. If we can provide the housing and then we are in a crisis like the one that we are, there is interest in connecting directly with their employer on housing opportunities. So with the completion of the work plan comes the development of a housing work plan from all of those results and a board retreat that we hosted in October. The housing work plan, I just clicked send on this morning to my board. They will be hopefully approving that at next week's meeting. We can really start working on it. Also, we do have our program with Landing Locals. We're looking at about 1 to 2 matches per month. So if you take that and combine it with all the other programs we're looking at, you really start to see some good results coming in the next year. And we also are talking about member agency expansion. We're working with a consultant to really best understand how we can welcome new members in a smart way and develop a program that looks at, or a process that looks at how to bring new members on and what that entails in regards to their role with the Workforce Housing Agency. And then finally, I want to thank Placer County, Town of Truckee, Martis Fund, all the partners that have involved in the Hopkins Village project. When this all started, we had a list of 40 JPA employees that were very, very interested in this housing product and this project. We now have a few that have already submitted applications, are very excited about the potential of being able to own their own home in this region. This project moved very quickly, and we are super impressed with the collaboration on it. So thank you all.
Teresa?
Hi, everybody. Just really briefly, I'm sure you already know this, but just to remind you that Sierra Community House does have the ability to provide rental assistance and utility assistance. So thank you very much for your referrals. And I won't list all the many partners who have helped to fund that. So thank you, all of those of you who are here now. And I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa. Allison?
So just a very quick heads up. The homeless point in time count is coming up for Nevada and Placer County. It's planned for January 27th to count individuals who are homeless on the night of January 26th. And I think many of you know the point in time count is done in conjunction with HUD and is really helpful for us as a community to understand the extent of our challenge around homelessness. And it also directly impacts the amount of money we get to our community to address our homeless issues. And so the count's being done a little bit differently this year. There's a really well thought out plan that we can share. So if you have specific questions, please let me know, or you can let Jasmine Bro know, who is also on the phone, and I'm happy to share that plan with you, but just a heads up. Thank you, Christina.
Thank you. Do we have time for Heidi? I know Stacey said last one after Allison.
Oh yeah, Heidi, please.
Heidi.
I'll do it quick. Hi, everybody. Heidi Alstad with the Martis Fund. We gave a grant of $40,000 to the Truckee Homeless Services, formerly the Emergency Warming Center. So very excited to continue that, supporting them. The Martis Fund has gone through a strategic planning process. We're still in the process, but we should be complete by February. And we were also supported the Hopkins Village project as well. So very excited that that's launching and there's a lot of interest. So thank you. That's it for me.
All right, everybody, fist pumps for all the updates. Come on, move that body. We've been sitting here for almost 3 hours, and I'm sorry, there's just hardly ever enough time, but I'm hoping that, Christina, if you'll just put up on the website or share on the website the partner highlights, you can go there and update it. It's your public facing version via Mountain Housing Council of what your agency is up to, and I was just perusing through there and shocked that some of you haven't put anything. At the minimum, you could say, join Mountain Housing Council. At the maximum, you could quarterly just jump in there and update it before these meetings. So with that, let's open it up for public comment. And again, if we can raise our hand, if you're a member of the public who'd like to provide the council with any feedback, you are welcome to come forward and share some of your thoughts. And just for those who are here from the public, we are grateful for your time as well, to get to know us and to engage in your community. And if there is a working group that you're interested in serving on, we would encourage you to do that. Again, I want to plug the state policy work. The more voices from our region, the better. Okay. I don't see anybody. Do you, Christina? Okay. And then finally, I just want to acknowledge the TTCF team that comes together to support this work. Christina Kind, not just behind the scenes, but up front as well, as she helps me navigate the technology and the agendas and the documentation that you received. If going through any of your packets or any of the information, you have any questions, just direct them to her or even myself for now. There will be a facilitator coming on board. We're in the middle of interviewing right now, so I'm very excited that next quarter somebody else will be in the hot seat here. And then finally, I have some board members who have joined us today. Wally Auerbach is our board liaison of Mountain Housing Council, but we also have Bill Austin, who is taking on that role over the next 6 months, working with Wally, and then there will be a handoff. And then 2 other board members who wear different hats, Alex Moralatos and Jerusha Hall, are also on this meeting representing their own organizations, but on TTCF's board. So with that, and Hannah, our chair, Hannah Sullivan, I think was on at one point. I'm not sure if she's still here, but thank you for joining us. And Allison Schwedner, TTCF staff representing the Community Collaborative. So thank you everybody for your time today. I hope you, and I'm sorry for the lighting, it's really bright, I'm trying to deal with it. I hope you take heart that as challenging as these times are and as dark as some of the days have been that we have faced as a community, that you are the ones who are moving us forward. You are the ones giving your time, energy, and agency resources to help make all of these amazing things possible. It's a source of pride for the foundation, and I hope it's a source of pride for you. So thank you, everybody, and just reach out if we can be helpful.
I'd like to add one more update. So we will send out meeting notes after this meeting. We'll also post them to Mountain Housing Council's website, and so we encourage you to share them with your board members.
Yes, please. Awesome. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.